Hello, this is Don Victor, author of Drawn to Win, host of the podcast Drawn to Win, the director of the Academy of Composition, and the creator of the Core 80 Experience, also known as the See and Grow Rich in Art video course, which you can find out more information at core80.com. This is the Drawn to Win podcast, where I have the incredible privilege to draw artists from around the world into fun and meaningful conversations around art and life, and yes, maybe even a little food. You can hear us each week on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. So make sure you subscribe so you always have a seat among friends. Let's get into the show. All right, Bonnie, welcome to the show. Yeah, so let's just jump into the conversation. I'm kind of curious. What are you currently working on?
I am working on a portrait of a horse. It's a bit of a secret commission. It's for somebody's birthday.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, he's a dressage horse, very beautiful dressage horse. Bit of an odd composition.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to do quite a bit of thinking before I started it, just to see how it was going to fit on my board.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's a bit of a weird camera angle, but I think I've got it, and it's working out actually really nicely.
Nice. And does the horse have a name?
He does. This is she's not going to hear this anyway, is she? So he's called Bindro T.
Bindro T.
Bindro T. Yeah. So he is. He actually represented Canada.
Oh wow!
At the last World Equestrian Games,
mm-hmm.
With one of the para riders. He belongs to a girl in the UK, and her father has asked me to draw him for her birthday.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. I was noticing that you're a master of the animal pet genre. That's what I'm calling it. I don't know if there's like an official word for it. Hopefully I'm not offending anybody out there.
Yes, I think it's equine pet portraits, that kind of thing. And it's very kind of you to say that I'm a master of it.
Well, I see a lot of people doing it, and there's a whole gamut of them, and some of them look like they're advanced high schoolers, and then you have some that are really, really good at the rendering of the forms, right? So it looks like the dog, or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You lean towards the second, obviously. But what I like about yours is that you can see soul behind the eyes. You can see life underneath the skin, Yeah,
and that's actually something that people comment on quite a lot. And obviously I work from photographs.
Mm-hmm.
My own photographs where I can. A lot of the time, if the commission is in another country or too far away, I have to work with what I've got. What I tend not to do is copy a photograph completely.
Yes.
Obviously, I have to copy the photograph because I need to get the look.
Mm-hmm.
But with their eyes, I always like to add something a little bit extra. And I couldn't actually tell you what that little bit extra was. It just appears.
I think it's honestly your catch lights, the little whites in it, the way you shape them and put them in, it just gives them light. I remember a movie called The Memoirs of a Geisha or something like that.
Amazing
movie, right?
Oh God, the book is incredible.
Well, I'm illiterate, so I don't read, so I have to watch movies. But I'm only joking. But in that movie, there was a moment where I think they were staying on a bridge, and it was starting to rain on the little girl, and this man says to her, you have very wet eyes, right?
Yeah.
And that really, really, really hit me. And I started noticing that it's almost like I don't want to say the purity of one's soul, but you could say that is seen in the moisture of one's eyes. And and the more um pain that's found in that soul, the less the drier the eye looks.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and so when I look at your work, the eyes don't look like, like the animal's crying, but it just looks alive. It looks refreshed. It looks I don't want to say happy, because it's not happy, but there's it's aware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I think you're right, and I think I add that almost unconsciously, because it's almost a feeling you get. It sounds weird saying you get a feeling when you're looking at something, visual, but it's a feeling I get if I know that an eye isn't, even if I've copied it exactly to what the photograph looks like. I get a feeling that something isn't quite right, and that's when I have to add something, like you say, the little touch light. So instead of it being bright white, I might add my favourite colour, or one of my favourite colours, which is cadmium orange, bright orange, very, very lightly in one of the catch lights, which just kind of, it highlights the pigment of the iris behind it, and it just lifts it. Even if the animal doesn't have orange in its eyes, it just gives it that extra something.
Yeah.
And I that's what I tend to do.
That's beautiful. It makes sense because, there's a warmth to it. And so you're adding that little warm note in there, which just brings it. It's like when you're listening to music and there's this beautiful, subtle rhythm. And then all of a sudden there's this it's like, doo, 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 it's just like this little bing, and it's just this little subtle difference that just raises the soul, raises the experience. So while I was looking through your images, I saw the old famous portrait shot of the artist next to the piece that they're working on, right? And you had this picture. It was like you smiling at the camera, and I believe it was a dog. And I'm looking around in the photo for a photo, because normally a lot of artists like to show off how great their painting is next to the photo.
Okay.
And and the fact that wasn't there, I was like, ooh, this is exciting, because this means you're actually not mimicking, but you're actually thinking. And and now, having this conversation with you, it just confirms that you're using the photos as a reference, but you're not copying the photo. And
yeah, and I think that's quite important for the work that I do. I mean, obviously, work is realistic, and people will look at it as they click through Facebook or on the internet or whatever, and some of it, they might go, oh my gosh, it looks just like a photograph, which, is a lovely compliment. But what I want for people, when you look a little bit deeper, you can see the pencil strokes, you can see something a little bit extra in there that's not in the photograph.
Indeed.
And I know you get people saying, oh, well, if you wanted realism, then, you just frame a photograph. But it isn't. It's still a piece of art. And I think, adding these little bits to it, it just makes it so much more special.
Indeed. Indeed.
And a lot of the time you get really very poor reference photos to work with, or something like that. And then you've got to try and use your own imagination, really, to work out which bits go where.
Yeah.
And that's where your knowledge of animals' anatomy comes in. So I'm a big horse lover. I've had horses all my life. I've ridden. I've owned my own. So instinctively how the hair lies, how the bone structure works, how the eye sits in the socket, how the eye works, how the ears work. You know instinctively. So even if you get a poor photograph where the camera has kind of distorted things a little bit, you can look at altering that. If the client wants it, in the pose that is in the photo, then fine. But, sometimes you get the foreshortening, if you've taken a photo too close to the animal and you get sort of like a lengthening of the nose or much wider. And knowing how to kind of just amend that, for me is really important. And that's something that I'm working on and developing in my own skill set.
That's awesome. That's spot on. I mean, the photos are good, but you need to know how to think through it and know, how to rearrange and emphasize and order it so that it gives off the impression that you want. And there was when I was younger and I was learning how to draw. I remember my drawing teacher talking a lot about that, like being able to make the image do what you want it to do and not just kind of be a slave to the photo.
Yeah.
So, I was looking, just real quick, you, when speaking, I don't know how far away you are from but
I'll try and get closer.
Yeah. Cool. That's a lot better. I was looking, when I was looking through your Facebook photos, there was a photo, I believe it was a younger version of you. And you were like hanging out with this horse, and there was like a dog on some wall. And do you know what photo I'm talking about?
No.
Oh, well, you have to go browse through your photos again. And when I saw that photo, I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense why there's so much soul in your work, because I got the impression that this isn't something that you just fell into doing animal art. But it appears that there's a long connection, and you were saying that you had a horse when you were younger, that you have this connection with animals.
Yeah, well, yes. I have a very strong connection with horses.
Mm-hmm.
Horses are... I started riding when I was 3.
Oh.
I had riding lessons at a local riding school where they had Olympic riders that owned the place. So, the teaching was a very high standard. I competed from a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
I did have breaks in between having horses, but I've just always loved horses and the smell of horses. And, if ever there's a horse in a field, I'll want to go and say hello to it. So, and I've always had dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So having animals around me is incredibly important.
That's awesome. And you see that in your work. And I like that every image you have, none of them feel the same. Each animal is its own unique personality.
Oh, that's a really nice piece of feedback. Thank you.
It's just communicating what I see. So yeah, it was. I really, really like your work a lot. So you grew up with animals, or let's say horses and dogs. Okay.
Yep.
The horses and hounds. Where did this love for art come into play?
Well, ever since I could walk, I wanted to be. This sounds really weird, but I wanted to be a horse. So until I was probably about 8.
You wanted to be a horse?
honestly, on my hands and knees. None of my trousers had knees in them. They were always ripped and, dirty and grass
That's
stained.
so cool.
I wanted to be a horse, and always sort of like doodling and drawing horses. Not, just
Mm-hmm.
like you do. I loved art at school. When I went to secondary school, I think there's even something in my report about me not doing very well, and they lay no blame on the horses, and all over my school books were drawings of horses, and art was what I loved, but I think the struggle and the frustration came in the fact that the work that I do now is quite intricate, very controlled,
Mm-hmm.
very detailed. And what was drummed into you, even at school, at sort of like, O-level age, 15, they wanted you to be really loose and free and abstract and, big shapes and all that type of stuff. And that, I struggled with that. I really, really struggled with that. And I struggled with a paintbrush. Not something that I found came easily. And back in those days, it was 1985. You weren't taught colour theory or anything like that. It was all just, paint what you see, but you weren't really given any directive. And then I went on to do a art college because I decided I was going to take a degree in fine art. So I went on to art college at 16 and spent 2 years being incredibly frustrated, really unhappy, and eventually didn't get into anywhere to do a degree. So I went straight into work at an advertising agency and became a typesetter.
Wow.
And a graphic designer.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that I did was precise, controlled, measured, exactly as it was going to look in a magazine or on the back of a packet or, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of when I stopped drawing. Well, that is when I stopped drawing at 17. I didn't pick up a pencil again until 2016.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
wow.
So I learned to be a typesetter, and in those days it wasn't like woodblock or anything like that, but it was a computer where you had to type in code
Mm-hmm.
to be able to set your typeface, to be able to set your line length, to be able to set your type size, typeface size. And then you ran it out onto a piece of bromide, and then somebody in the studio would cut it up and stick it down.
Yeah.
An old-fashioned paste-up artist.
Yep.
I learned how to do that, and then of course that's when the Mac started to come in, and you started to be able to use a Mac to be able to create stuff on a screen. So that's when I became a creative art worker, and I was a creative art worker. Gosh, up until about 2000 maybe, and then I think inevitably what happens is when you're really good at something in an organisation, you then get moved up into a managerial position. Mm-hmm. So I became a manager, and from becoming a manager, that's when I got into the coaching side of stuff. And then I took on a coaching position with an organisation and worked internationally as an executive coach. And then started to learn about mindfulness and started to do colouring for mindfulness in January 2016. And that's where I discovered coloured pencils, and I discovered that I could draw.
Wow. So you really only been at it for 2 years then?
Yeah.
Holy crap. That's impressive. Because you sure don't look like you've only been at it for 2 years. It looks like you got, 20 years of experience behind your belt.
Well, that's kind of, I always want to be the best that I can be. When I say I'm obsessive, I'm not crazy obsessive, but I just want to be the best I can possibly be. So I will find the areas that I need to improve in.
Mm-hmm.
I will look to see who can help me, whether it's a YouTube video, whether it's another artist, whether it's a book, and I will strive to create what I see in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where my art has come from. I'll visualize it in my head, and then I'll work out how do I get fur to look like fur.
Mm-hmm.
And you get so many tips from different artists. Facebook is fantastic for groups and artists who share their knowledge and their experience and everything. And you pick up tips and you build on what other people are doing, and you end up with your own technique, really, that works.
That's amazing. Wow. I'm still kind of shocked. Like since you're kind of new to it again, obviously it's been in you ever since you were a kid, but like that you're kind of new to it. Where in that 2-year period of time, what are you most surprised that you were able to achieve? And then I'll follow that up with another question. Where do you feel that you still need to focus on raising your standard?
Okay. So I think the thing that surprises me the most is the lovely feedback that I get. The fact that that people really do want my work.
Mm-hmm.
It's great, but I'm always shocked when somebody asks for a commission. I send them a price, and then they say, "Right, how do I send a deposit?" I'm always like, "Oh, okay." That to me is surprising because, well, I don't know. You never sort of praise your own work, do you? I can accept the bits that are good and that I do well, but there are always parts of my work that I want to improve.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, what do I want to develop?
Yeah. Like, what part of your work do you want to kind of raise the standard of? Like, not saying that you're not doing it right or good, but you want to improve on it, or maybe there is a part in your process that you just feel you really need to kind of spend a little more time with.
Yeah, at the beginning, when I first started doing commissions and everything, the main focus obviously is the eyes and the nose, and then what would kind of almost get left behind, and it was almost like I was getting a bit bored, was if I'm drawing a horse and I've done his head and everything and I've got the neck and the mane to do, well, there could be parts of the mane that were substandard, that really needed to be looked at properly, and that's something that I and vast areas of colour. So like the neck of a horse, say, that's a big area to fill with coloured pencil. That's what I want to improve. I want to ensure that the detail in the neck area, for example, and the mane and the forelock area of a horse has the same impact as the eyes and the bone structure and everything on the face, and I think that's where the frustration is, because you finish I always like to draw a horse that's facing right, because you have to start on the neck then, left to right, so you have to start on the left, and you get the neck done first, and then you've got all of the lovely detail to do in the face, so you don't lose interest. But if you've got one that's looking left, you've then got all of the detail in the neck to do once you've finished all of that lovely eyes and nose and everything like that. And that's what I need to develop and ensure that every single piece of my work is as good as each other. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally. Now, so when you're looking at the full image, do you want them to be I want to use the word as detailed Is the word detailed that you're looking for? Like you want those details to be as crisp and clean as they are in the other areas, or or is there another word that you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it could be the detail. Sometimes it could be that I want a really soft, almost out of focus look.
Mm-hmm.
Something's going out off into the background. And it's becoming, what's the word? Making myself work consistently throughout the whole piece and not losing focus.
Gotcha. Let me. I have this thought, and I'm trying to like get my thoughts together on it. There's a sculptor named Bernini, and one of the things that made Bernini like famous was that when he would do these busts, he just wouldn't like cut them off and end them. What he basically did was he designed like movement in these edges, so that as the bust came down, it might be, the fabric might be moving or something like that, and he created these really wonderful compositions in these edges. And it sounds like to me that when you're trying to figure out what do you do with these long areas, these large masses of area, like the neck or whatnot, that you're still trying to figure out a way of not making it compete necessarily with the eyes and the nose or the face, but in a way that when you look at it, it still feels there's a harmony between the face and the neck.
Yeah.
But at the same time, how do you finish it off? Like in a way where, it's not competing, but it all works together as one whole.
Definitely.
Yeah, so that might be a sculptor you might want to go look at, because the type of portrait you're doing, you're not putting them in a scene or anything like that. They're kind of floating, silhouetted, silhouettes of these.
Yeah, that's actually that's a really interesting. That's really interesting because when I look to build the color, the portraits that I do, I describe it as sculpting. Because I build the tonal. I don't go straight in and draw hairs. I build the tonal values up and up and up, and add color and leave color out, and maybe take some color out with a putty eraser or something like that. And it almost feels like I'm sculpting the piece, rather than drawing it. So that's really interesting to say that, go and have a look at, a sculptor.
Well, that's cool. I felt weird saying that because I'm like, what does a sculpture have to do with, this color pencil rendering? And well, now that makes sense. So that's really neat. So, you're pretty jam packed for the next year on commissions, correct?
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
And that it amazes me. And then I think, oh gosh, have I made a mistake? Have I left a load of gaps out, in my spreadsheet? And I haven't. Actually, I've probably crammed too many in because I find it very difficult to say no to people. But yeah, I am booked up until February 2019.
Wow. What a great feeling that must be.
Yeah. It's scary because you then think, oh god, but then people are willing to wait. I took 2 deposits from somebody the other day, whose portrait's going to be done in January, and they are very happy to wait as long as I keep communicating with people and making sure that they know what's going on, and if they send me photographs, I must sort of comment back on them and that type of thing. But yes, it's frightening, and the question has come up. Do I close my commission book, for a few months, or do I just keep it going? Or and this, I suppose, it's all dependent as well on what I've got in mind for the future, of what I want to do. So, yeah, it could be that I take on fewer commissions in any 1 month so that I can work on some of my own pieces.
Or you jack up your prices.
Yeah, and that's what I've been doing. So I started working full time in January 2017.
Nice.
I actually paid to go on a webinar with an American coloured pencil artist called Anne Kohlberg, and she has the colour magazine for coloured pencils, and she runs workshops and cruises and everything, and is just everything coloured pencil. And she did this fantastic webinar, and everything that she told me I knew, but I hadn't kind of figured out that I knew it, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Part of that was, if you take commissions, if you have a full commission book for 2-3 months, put your prices up by 20%. And every time you have a full commission book for 2 or 3 months, you put your prices up by 20%. And that's what I've been doing continually throughout 2017 and into 2018.
Nice.
What has really amazed me is that, because I think everybody is scared about putting their prices up because they think, I'm going to, price myself out of the market. Nobody's going to want to buy my art. I'm too expensive, blah, blah, blah. But actually what happens is you just move your target audience.
Yeah, that's all it is.
You move into a different audience, a different demographic. Yep. And what I've found is I'm actually busier now that my prices have doubled. And I've got, just under a year's waiting list.
That's incredible.
My prices that have doubled, and I think there's a psychological thing behind that as well. Even if somebody says, "Oh, I can do you an A4 portrait for £50," people are going to go, "Well, that's far too expensive." Someone will do it for 10. Well, my prices start at £400.
Yep.
But people go for the next size up at £500.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're hitting a different type of person with they've got a different budget.
Yeah, and different mentality. It's and that's one reason why they're not. That's one reason why they're willing to wait, because I read a book called "The 10 Distinctions Between the Middle Class and Millionaires," and one of the things that they were breaking down was the way you think about time often affects where you are economically. So if you think day to day, that's how poor people think, or very poor people think. Week to week is where poor people are, and the middle class tend to think month to month. If they're going to go purchase something, a house, a car, whatever, well, can I afford that monthly payment? The rich will think year to year. And that's how they think, so they're not like, oh, how much am I making this month? They're looking at it, maybe every 3 months, 4 quarters, right? Or what are we going to bring in for this, this year, And then the very wealthy think in decades. Okay. So, and so it makes total sense to me that as you're raising your price and you're getting into a different strata of economics, that those people have the patience to say, oh, okay, yeah, if I have to wait a year, so be it,
Yeah.
Plus, the portrait itself, it's not like, I need it now or I'm going to die without it,
Yeah, I know. I mean, you do get people saying, oh gosh, it's my dad's birthday next week and do you think you can fit something in? And it's just like, God, I really wish I could, but I absolutely can't.
You say you can, just double the price.
Well,
yeah.
Right.
And if they say, yeah, well, then you make time. But that's amazing. I commend you on that, and I commend you on your courage because, you know, I don't want to get into politics or anything, but one of the things often around political talk is this idea of, you know, the rich have all this money. If they would just give it to us, we would live better, you know? And I often think to myself, like, you wouldn't live better because it requires a different type of thinking. And, and so that always irritates me because it's like, to outside of, you know, maybe people being born into wealth or different stratas of wealth, most people have to move in. They either move in and out of it. Okay. And, but to move up requires oftentimes a lot of courage because you have to break what you're used to. And for example, well, I'm comfortable at this price. I know I can get that. If I ask for more, then you might ask yourself, well, who am I? I've only been at this for 2 years, you know, or that might be something that comes in your head, right? Or if I ask for more, I'm going to lose clients.
Yeah.
You know, and there's that fear of that, you know, that you're not good enough, or that somehow it's going to hurt you.
Mm.
And
Yeah, that definitely comes into it.
Yeah. And so that requires courage because you can't get rid of that fear. You just have to accept the fear and move past it. And when you do, the story you just said, I've heard so many times from different people in different fields. There's a podcast that I love listening to. It's called Big Money Stylists, right? And it's about these ladies who do hair, and they talk about the hairstylist, but they call them artists. So I love listening to it because they're really talking about artists, even though they're doing hair and not painting or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But the mentality is the same. And these hairstylists sometimes are working 60 hours a week, you know, never being home, always on the weekends they're working. You know, they're excited because they were able to serve 30 to 40 people at $15 a haircut, or maybe a woman at $150, right? But this podcast is with these women who have figured out a way to maybe serve 4 clients a week at like $1,200 to $1,500 a pop, you know, making maybe $20,000 a month, and having time with their family, having, you know, and doing their artistry. But they talk about everything you were just saying about, like, the fear of losing what you have, people rejecting you, nobody paying for you. And they all came into that realization that all you're doing is moving from one group to another group, and there's always a group that's willing to pay.
Yeah.
You know.
And if you know, you've got to be in it to win it, haven't you?
You're so awesome.
But if you don't put yourself out there, and if you don't try, then you'll never know whether it'll work or not. You know, and that's always been my philosophy, really, is that be open to opportunities.
Yep.
You know, don't just squirrel yourself away, but if there are opportunities to get out there, to share your work, to talk about your work, do it. But also try new things. You know, don't just stick with what you know and you feel comfortable with.
Yep.
Try something different.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, this mentality that you're having and this growth that you're experiencing, you said earlier that you when you were working in this one company, you became a coach.
Yeah.
And then you were telling me that you actually have a coach that you work with. Could you share a little bit about that experience?
Yeah. Yes. Well, I actually discovered coaching through horses. I lost my confidence. I had a bad fall, lost my confidence. Wouldn't go out of the arena, wouldn't go out hacking, was scared, basically. And I found a company that did a one-day workshop confidence building. And I went on this one-day workshop, and it just blew my mind and changed everything, not just about me as a horsewoman and how I could gain my confidence with my riding, but it changed the whole way that I looked at things, the way that I worked, the way that I managed my team, and the way that I treated other people. I'm a very passionate person. Whatever I'm doing, I put an awful lot into it. Well, I put everything into it. But the passion on the flip side can come across as being quite aggressive. And people who know me now would be like, oh, don't be so silly, you're not aggressive at all. You're so lovely and blah, blah, blah. But before I understood about coaching and properly what empathy is and putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, I just felt that my way was the only way, and people needed to do things my way. And that's what the coaching side of stuff has really, really helped me with. I took a sort of like on the same lines as a foundation degree in coaching and executive coaching. I did a lot of coaching hours. I worked out in the Middle East, in Bahrain, sort of helping and coaching senior managers in a big organisation. And what I found just amazingly astounding is that just by asking questions of somebody about their situation that they're wanting to develop in, or they're having issues with, or something like that, people will come to their own decisions and they will make a plan, and you don't have to tell them anything. And that is what I found to be just so incredible about coaching. And I have a fabulous friend called Sally, and she, had worked in the same organisation as me, and she's a fabulous friend, but she also is my coach. So if I've got an issue with anything, it could be a family issue, it could be an issue with my blooming car, it could be anything. But she won't sit and advise me what to do. She will coach me, and I will make my own decision and my own plan as to how to get out of whatever it is that I'm having challenges with. And that is completely invaluable. To have somebody coach you, and for you to come up with, you can get really quite worried about the silliest of things, and just for somebody to ask questions about it, and for you to mull it over in your mind and sort it out and come out with a plan, and it's just like, what was I worrying about? That's all I need to do. And it's you can't see the wood for the trees, and you knew all along what you had to do, but you didn't know. And just with the coaching side of stuff, the asking the questions, it's a conversation with a huge outcome at the end of it. And I just think every artist should have a coach.
I agree. It's interesting. I read somewhere that the concept of a coach comes from horses. Because you have the horse and coach, right? And if you had to travel somewhere, you would hire a coach to make sure that you got from where you were to where you wanted to be safely, on time, and that it was often used to carry valuables, things that were of value, be it a person, a dignitary, money, whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're here and you want to be there, working with a coach, someone who can help guide you or get you there, is extremely important. And any high performer has probably at some point come under either into a mentorship, an apprenticeship, or some type of coaching relationship. It's just, I know in the United States, it's interesting. Teachers are paid very low, but coaches are one of the highest paid professions. and because there's just something, you're not, like an athlete, you're not teaching them how to play the game. They already know how to play the game, but you're working with them to learn these little micro adjustments that all of a sudden give them that next edge. If they can just run a little bit faster, if they can throw a little bit further. In terms of art, I work with a number of artists as a coach, and we focus on composition and design, because it just happens to be one of those areas that so many artists struggle in. And it's just amazing how fast, when you take someone who knows what they're doing, they know how to draw, they know how to paint, they have that confidence, they've been around a while. And some people who are just starting out, but you're able to like just point them in the right direction. They know how to do everything. They just didn't know how to bring it together. And then it's just like, boom, it just clicks. And all of a sudden they're like, they're just jumping from one place to another. And
well, that's the thing, isn't it? Art, the stuff that I do, the colour pencil drawings and whatever, it's not just about putting pencil on the paper.
Mm-hmm.
It's about learning how colour works.
Yep.
Not necessarily any colour, but learning how your pencils work over the top of each other. How do I get this sort of effect, that sort of effect?
Mm-hmm.
But the composition bit, I really struggled with. And actually asking questions of more experienced artists and getting people to critique your work is a fantastic way of getting that knowledge and being able to learn new things.
Mm-hmm.
The splitting your paper into three, and making sure that you've got the focal point in the right place, and balancing the image and all that type of thing is all very, very new to me. But if you don't ask the questions, then you don't get the answers.
That's right. That's right.
And it's about not being so arrogant that you think that your work is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It's about knowing there are bits that are really good, but knowing that there are huge pieces of your work that you can develop and make even better.
It's that self-awareness. And I think actually it's interesting. I think self-awareness or awareness is probably the most important ingredient in art making. So, for example, with you, the reason why your work is so just so good. Yeah, you have great technique, but it's your awareness of the dogs and the horses. And you said before that, it's the, the anatomy, this and that. I think it goes beyond that. It's, the animal. It's funny. I've worked with some floral artists, and several of them had, one loved tulips, and she's a florist, and she's been with, designing tulips and floral arrangements for 20, 30 years, but she also paints. And another lady out of Michigan, beautiful gardens and just always with these flowers. And it was interesting because meeting them, I would say, you have no idea what a flower is. You don't know really what it is yet. And it was just funny because in the beginning they would be like, "What are you talking about?" Like, you'll see. And then when you guide them through the designing process, and they have to go and spend time with flowers and look past what they look like or what they smell like, but actually spend time with them from this, I don't want to say esoteric perspective, but it's much more this energy perspective. which they always did know because they had relationship with these things, but giving them the ability to articulate these feelings that they had, all of a sudden it just unlocked this whole new power in their work, and their work just went off to a whole nother level, even though they were painting the same subject, and technically their painting skills really didn't change. But there was something behind it all that just made their images far more alive, and what it is just an awareness, and like I said, you have that awareness with the animals. You can see it in the eyes, you can feel it in the energy in the skin. And I say the energy in the skin because someone might say, well, yeah, you're kind of focusing on the hairs, and it's not the hairs. It's each mark you make. It's almost like a sound when the eye sees it, right? And so if you make a whole bunch of marks that are tight together, it's going to feel denser. If it's further apart, it's going to feel lighter. If they're going in different directions, it's going to vibrate. So all of these things your eye picks up, and then it begins to interpret this vibration, this visual vibration. And if you know how to construct it, you can then trigger intentionally specific emotions in people. And it's
very interesting.
What was that?
I said that sounds really interesting. I've not heard of anything like that before. But that makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, I do this little test, and I know I did it once here on the podcast before, but I'll do it again with you if you're interested in it. If you just imagine like a king, and he's standing by, let's say, a window, right? And it's a silhouette. It's just black and white. You see this black and white king standing there, and behind him is, you might see a big window, and it's just white. And so I'm going to ask you a question. If in that behind him there was a scene, and we wanted the viewer to feel, this is a key, to feel that king was a peacetime king. He ruled during a time of peace. Would you create the scene behind him primarily with horizontal movements, vertical movements, or diagonal movements?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, when you said create a scene behind him, my first thoughts were mountains. So I think probably sort of like, I suppose that would be diagonal, wouldn't it?
Sure. And I probably shouldn't have said scene. That's why I kind of bit my tongue. But okay, so
I got that wrong.
Yeah, I kind of messed up on that. Because the key here is like what normally when I give the little test, the key is not to put images in anyone's head. And when I said scene, I was like, oh. But let's say he was a wartime king, okay, and you wanted people to feel that there was this aggression, that there was this war, that there was this heightened sense of energy in the piece. Would you use primarily horizontals, verticals, or diagonals?
I think I'd probably use verticals.
Okay, so that would, and why would you say verticals?
I don't know. I'm thinking sort of spears and bars and almost like railings.
Interesting, very interesting. Okay, so I think like if I was coaching you, right, I would have you draw it out, like just make marks on paper, right, so that you can actually see them and then answer those questions. Because your answers, and this is where it gets interesting, if you listen to your answers carefully, they're all about the nouns, right? The spears or the bars or those kinds of things, or the scenery in terms of a mountain. And then what happens when you see the noun, you begin to try to interpret what the noun is. But the energy is not what you see. It's not the nouns. It's actually what composes those things. And so you could look at the mountains as a set of diagonals, right? It would just be interesting to go and draw them out and look at those energies. Well, we call them energies, but like those patterns, those visual patterns, and then answer those questions. But we could probably do that another time. So with Sally, Sally, what's her last name?
Smart.
Smart. That's such a cool name. Sally, you're so smart. Well, thank you. It's my name. Does she primarily does she help you with your business as well then?
She can do. I mean, I don't. We're friends more than anything else, and she's not a working coach. She just that's what she's been in the past, and if I need specific help, like anything, she will help me. The business side of stuff, she will help with any blockages I've got, but not kind of advising anything. Where I worked before being a coach, I actually owned the P&L to quite a large studio, guide studio. So I was dropped in at the deep end and had to learn how to budget and forecast. And that is what has given me the business acumen to be able to run my own business. So I have a forecast. I have a rolling 18-month forecast. I have a business plan. I mean, everything's not set in stone because you can't forecast exactly. But I kind of know month on month what's going to be happening, what's going to be going out, what's going to be coming in, and I have a plan for all sorts of things that are going to happen in the future. Now, Sally can help with the coaching side of stuff if I get stuck with something, if I get frustrated with something. And she can help me work around that and build a plan if things haven't gone to plan, if you see what I mean.
I gotcha. That's cool. And do you ever envision yourself coaching other people, like coaching other artists to enhance their businesses?
Yeah, I do it all the time.
Oh, okay.
I do it. I find naturally that I want to help people. And being part of Facebook and being part of all the different groups and everything, inevitably you get people asking questions. How can I do this? How can I do that? And it could be a question that means that I have to ask questions, or it could be a question where I can say, well, this is what I did, and this really worked for me, and this really helped. And that's for the business side of things and for the actual composing and drawing. So I tend to do a lot of little short video clips, and I post them in Facebook groups to show people how I layer colour and how I use the pencils. Because that was something that I found really in short supply when I was learning. Good quality, real-time video showing me how to layer and blend. Just everything was in time lapse, or you had to pay to be able to view it. So that's what I do. I put myself out there and I help people, and in a way it's almost like a bit of it's part of my plan, because I want to create tutorials and voiceover videos in the future. So if I can build my audience now, then hopefully they'll become followers when I start to create these different parts of my business. Nice.
So you're
but I'm not doing it for my benefit ultimately. I'm doing it because I want to help other artists.
And primarily you're wanting to help artists who want to use color pencil?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I mean, although I find that I can coach people or other artists who use different mediums, but obviously I can help them with the business side of stuff. I can coach them for them to create a plan of how they're going to move forwards. Obviously, I can't give advice on how to create oil painting or different techniques for
Sure.
stuff because I don't know that. But the stuff that I do know that is relevant to them, I can be helpful if they want me to be.
Nice. That's awesome. That's really, really awesome. And do you just help them now, or do you have people who actually pay you to coach them and to help them with their business?
So no, I don't have any paid people. I'm taking on my first student on Friday.
Oh, congratulations!
That's she's an established artist. She's very good, but she is finding that there's certain bits are challenging, and she wants help. So that's the first for me, and I'm really looking forward to that. But everything else is just me putting myself out there and helping people. And in the future, it could be that it becomes like a bit of a paid service, but at the moment, it's just being helpful.
That's awesome, and congratulations on this Friday. That's really, really nice. So let me, before I ask you how people can get in contact with you, there's a part of the show that I like that I call agency, and just a part where we get to kind of give a little shout out. And I know we talked about Sally. Just kind of like give a little shout out to either people or businesses or services that you utilize for you to either produce your art or get it out there to the market, or just to kind of complete that flow. Who would be two or three people that you would recognize as being part of your process?
Okay, so I think one of the most important people would be my framer. He's called Ian Peacock. He owns a little gallery in the city that I live just outside of. It's called Westgate Fine Art. Every single piece that I produce, he mounts or mats, I think you call it in the. And I have that done professionally because I just want everything to look perfect when somebody opens their packaging.
Indeed.
So each piece that I produce goes directly to him. He mounts it for me. He wraps it beautifully in acid-free acetate, and then it's all ready for me to package. But he is incredible at deciding what frame to put on a piece. I don't frame every piece, but some pieces are framed, and I tend to take the client with me. We go, he looks at the whole piece, and he says, he asks them, where's it going? What's your decor like? What's your floor like? What's the walls like? What are the colours? And then he will come out every single time with the perfect frame.
Wow.
He's amazing. And then, of course, when you see your portrait frame, it just takes on a whole new level. It's amazing.
That's awesome. And it's interesting because you're saying the key to what you did as a coaching and also what Sally does, and now your framer is doing when he's working with the client, is it all starts from this intentional foundation of asking questions.
Definitely.
Beautiful.
And then the other company that has been incredibly helpful as well is I don't have a scanner as yet because the majority of pieces I do are people's pets or horses, and it's not something that you would scan and take prints of. But I have done some original pieces, and people have asked for prints of what I've done. So there's a studio in Harrogate. It's called Square Studios, and he creates giclée and canvas prints of photographs and artwork. And he is just fantastic. So I'll take my pieces in, he'll scan them, he colour corrects, using your artwork and making sure that everything is perfect, stitches together if necessary, and produces really, really high quality giclée prints or canvas prints. And he's, again, just brilliant. If I want to do an art show or something like that, and I need some pieces to take with me, I can get prints done, and they are. You can't tell whether they're prints or the real thing.
That's all beautiful.
Yeah.
It's throughout this conversation, it's the two things that keep coming up. We call them the two Qs, are questions and quality, and is that right? Yeah, quality. And it's interesting because a lot of artists want to hit that higher level, and but they just don't have the standard or to hit the quality that's required. And they may be asking for the higher price. They might even have the boldness to ask for the higher price, but that's part of it. But there has to be a quality, a craftsmanship to the work. I remember years ago I was in a gallery, and I was having a conversation with the owner of the gallery, and she was kind of getting a little upset at this thought. She said, a lot of artists come in and they don't want to spend the money on the quality materials, the quality canvases. They put an image on the front. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not, and then they want like $10,000 for it, right? And she was explaining to me how she has buyers who are willing to pay $10,000 for an image. And she says, when they come in and they find a piece that they like, they turn it around. She said, basically, they're just not looking at the image on the surface, on the front. They're looking at the whole entire artifact, how it's stretched, how was the back cared for, is it, what's the quality of the materials, like they're looking at quality over this entire experience, not just, is it a pretty picture or not?
Yeah, definitely. And I know, there are quite a few artists who map their own work, who buy in. But I just like the quality that you get when you have it done professionally. There's a backing board to it. There's a around it. The whole piece feels sturdy.
Yes.
It looks like it's come. It just looks professional. And that's what I'm trying to portray with my business. I want to stay professional, and I want everything that comes out of my studio to be professional. And again, I've got things in the pipelines to work on to make my packaging more professional. Because I think that's part of the whole piece. Somebody gets a cardboard box, but what comes out of it needs to be not just a bubble wrap picture. There needs to be something extra, and again, that's something I'm working towards as well.
What's your idea on it?
Oh, I want to have, how to care for your portrait. Next steps. I want to include, a card, because I just feel that if you've got a lovely postcard or something, that somebody's going to take it out, they're going to put it down on their kitchen table or whatever. They might have a friend who comes in, picks it up. Oh, quite fancy portrait. It's just about having marketing material there that goes with your, just those little things. But just that makes it a little bit more special. I know quite a lot of artists create a certificate of authenticity. And at first I thought, oh gosh, that's a bit, I don't know whether I thought it was a bit arrogant to put a certificate of authenticity. But now I'm thinking, no, you need that.
Yeah.
I'm a professional artist, and people need to know that this is an original piece by me, with the date, with my signature, all of that type of stuff,
Yep.
popped on the back. And I think that's a really important part of the journey of becoming a more professional artist.
Yep. I remember years ago there was this TV show called Antique Roadshow.
Yes.
And I guess it's still out there, right? And I picked up on something when they would look at these antiques, paintings, sculptures, whatever it was, furniture. They would look for a mark, like a mark that would be embedded into the object itself, and you could say that the signature of the artist is a mark. But I didn't want that, right? I wanted, like, when people looked at the back of the painting, that there was something there. And so I designed this logo, this mark, a seal. I call it the Vargas seal, and then I had it like engraved in like these little round medallions, and I would then put them on the back of my paintings, and just so when they turned it around, it was like boom, it was there, and then I had that little mark created into a red stamp. So I would like stamp the inside of my stretchers, and just give it, like people want to see that stuff, and so just give that and let it be an experience for them. So I like all the stuff that you're saying there, and yeah, even the certificate, because of provenance and things like that. You're just giving that stuff to the people that they want, and it just adds so much more value to the work and the experience.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, here's a little trick that you can add in there. When I was working for a gallery once, I remember my first show that I hung, and I had a blast hanging the show. One of the reasons I had a blast was because for every image I put up, I didn't have to make more than one hole. Like it was, and I think I put up almost 40 some images, and I did not have to. And with each image, every hole that I measured out, it was precise. Boom, 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 boom. And I didn't have to go back and like, oh no, that needs to be a little higher or a little to the right, and it was just this little weird moment where I like, wow, that was awesome, right? But the key to hanging the artwork, there was a video that I saw, I think it was on Facebook or something, maybe about a year earlier. And so it took me a little while to go find it, and I found it. And the guy was explaining how to hang a work of art so that it didn't matter the size of the piece, but that it was always 57 inches off the floor to eye level. And so I hung this entire show, and some of the images were only maybe 8 inches high, and some were 40 inches high. And I actually had this one piece that was like, I don't know, 6 feet high or whatever. And there's this little mathematical little equation that I did, and I measured out everything, and I wrote on the back of each painting on the frame, how high from the floor do you need to put the hole so that the center of the image is exactly at 57 inches, right?
Yeah.
And it, like the whole show, it was just beautiful because you could walk through and your head wasn't going up and it wasn't going down, and there was just this harmony, and it didn't matter the size of the images. There was just this harmony that as you walk through, every image, the center of every image was exactly at 57 inches. And it was just like, whew. And the reason why they say 57 inches, because it's the average size of a human being. So their eye level. Some people will be a little taller, shorter, but the average is 57 inches. And so I added that to the people's paintings. So when they got it back, they could tell the people who bought it or wherever they were going to put it, like just put your hole at, maybe it was 118 inches or 30, whatever it was, right? And so it was already done, and they had the perfect spot on their wall to hang that image. So that may be something that artists who are listening may add to contribute some more value to the people who are buying it or going to hang it.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Bonnie, let me ask you this most important question before we close out here. Being in the UK, what is something that you absolutely love eating?
Chocolate.
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 Is there like a special chocolate in the UK that you haven't found anywhere else?
No,
just chocolate.
I do like dairy milk. I shouldn't eat chocolate. I'm on a continual diet, and it's not something I should eat, but it is something that's my go-to food.
Your go-to food? You call chocolate food? That's awesome.
I know that's not a food, but I have a beautiful teapot and a little a lovely cup mug, and my teapot holds exactly 3 mugs of tea in it. And I drink tea throughout the day, and I love it. And I only drink black tea.
Only black tea. Do you put anything in it?
No, I used to have milk, but because I worked out in the Middle East, they didn't have normal milk, and it was condensed milk, and it was horrible. So I learned to drink my tea black. So now I just have relatively black tea out of the teapot.
That's awesome. When I went to Portugal, I made the decision not to put sugar or milk in my coffee. And then that went into my tea. And so for the last year, I've had just black tea, black coffee. And give me 1 second. Oh, I had a cough there. And I've enjoyed it. And what I found that if I take the tea, and I don't know if you do this or if this is blasphemy, being that I am in the U.S., we don't really have a huge tea culture. Oh, wow, I'm going to cough again. But what I like to do is take it when it's hot, both the coffee or the tea, and then take a glass of ice and just throw it in there. And for some reason, when either the coffee or the tea, at least for me, gets chilled that quickly, it almost tastes sweet. I have no idea why, but I just love it. It's like, it's cool.
I'll have to try that.
Yeah, it's neat. So, being from the UK, do you eat like fish and chips and things like that too?
Yeah. Fish chips. Don't have fish and chips very regularly. I think if I was going to go out, I like a steak and chips.
Steak and chips. Okay.
Yeah, I do like.
You like? If you're gonna do it, you can do it right.
Well, I was brought up by my father was a chef.
Oh wow, really?
I was brought up living over the top of a restaurant, a very well-known restaurant in the north of England, and so I was brought up on exceptionally good food.
Oh wow! That's something interesting to think about, because maybe that's where maybe that's part of where this sensitivity and awareness of quality comes from, or at least was cultivated maybe in you.
I think my father's Swiss. So
okay.
So I think that's where the control comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And the fine detail. I think that's probably a Swiss thing.
Yeah. When I was when I was learning to draw when I was in my late teens, um, one of the things that my drawing master would have us do were Swiss drawings, and these isometric drawings. Um, but he would always call them the Swiss drawings, and places like Germany, Switzerland, like the 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 drawings that come out of those areas are very, very analytical, logical, mathematical. um, Picasso said, if you really, really want to learn to draw, go to Germany, and you're going to learn to draw. Um, so yeah, I can. That's interesting. That's really interesting. That's very cool. That's very cool. Well, how can people contact you, either to purchase a commission or to commission you to do their portraits of their horses and dogs, or if an artist at some point, when you open the doors to start taking in students under the coaching of their businesses, how can artists come and find you?
So I've got a website, which is www.bonnysnowdonfineart.co.uk, and that's Bonny with a Y and Snowdon with an O-N.
Okay, cool.
Because everybody gets it. I've got a Facebook page, which you can either find via Bonny Snowdon Fine Art or think Bonny Snowdon Portraits. And I'm on Instagram as well, which is Bonny _ Fine Art _ Bonny _ Snowdon _ Fine Art. And I've got email, which is bonny.snowdon@gmail.com.
If I was going to give a little award, outside of just a praise, I would give you, Julie, what I would call my owl award. And an owl. And the reason why is because I see three things in you. And I just want to take a moment to to honor you on those because, well, you earned them. When I think of an owl, I think there are a couple very magical animals in the world. There's a lot. Well, they're all magical in their own way, but I've always loved the owl. It's something I also see in my daughter, and it happens to be, I think, one of her favorite animals as well. But you have the ability to see. You see the big picture. You see how it all works together. And the reason why you can do that is because you feel very comfortable in an analytical space. And so your ability to see and your ability to think. And then I remember once we were in a meetup and my internet just kept going out and out. And it went out for, I don't know, almost 30 minutes, right? It was just so, and I was so irritated because it was like the first time that I wasn't part of the meetup. And I came back and I finally logged back in. And there you are leading these women through the process. I'm like, where did you live? Who is that? And so for me, the owl just isn't someone who can see and who can analyze, okay, but who is a leadership figure, right? And so this award for this certificate here is partly for completing the course, but what I've seen throughout the time is that you just have you can see it and you can think it, and I just want to just honor you in that.
Thank you. I'm blown away. I'd never see myself as a leader normally. Wow, thank you.
Clapping.
It's interesting when the United States formed, one of the concepts that they had was when people ran for government, for politics, one of the early practices was that the community came together and elected, or nominated, I should say, and ultimately elected, but nominated the person that they felt should go represent them. Nowadays, it's like, oh, I see myself as the leader, and I should represent you, right? It's very different. And so the reality is, the reason why, the fact that you don't see yourself as a leader is probably why you make a pretty badass leader. So now let me just share with you what I have here in this certificate, okay? It just basically acknowledging that you finished, that you completed the Core 80 experience, okay? And from this point on, we won't let anyone come into the academy unless they have this up front, okay? They're not going to enter into our composerships and things like that unless they're not going to learn how to do it unless they first learn how to see it, okay?
I think that's good.
Yeah, yeah. And then, what was that?
I said that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you guys, excuse me, are the Core 80 XO1, okay? So you're the first experience. So you have that, but nobody else will ever have, okay? And I was trying to figure out, do I call it a certificate? Do I call it a diploma? And I came up with this, which I was leaning towards a word of honor, because that's a word I like to use a lot. But more importantly, we're going to call these diplomas, these certificates, trusts, because we're trusting you. And I say we, I mean 10,000 years of history, art history is trusting you to carry on what we all know, which is very important, which is being able to read and author through the language of design. And so it's just not something, a diploma of what you did, but it's a commitment to honoring this heritage, because this is what it is. It's the artist's heritage is what you're tapping into and you're receiving. And so, yeah, Julie, well, I guess you're the first one to receive the trust.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored.
Congratulations, Julie.
Yes, and I have to say, I agree with Don's insight into your personality and character, because I thought, yes, Julie would be a great leader because I would trust her. I would trust her judgment. And I didn't even look at the trust next to your name on my screen of the certificate. It's really interesting how that quality in you is communicated to Don, and I felt it also.
Thank you very much.
It's a good day.
I'm sorry. I'm going to have to scoot because I've got to get the kids to school. But congratulations, everyone. You've all done an awesome job with this course.
In just 30 days, the Core 80 experience teaches you to decode the intentional design underneath great masterpieces. Through video lessons, assignments, and feedback, you learn to recognize the underlining structures like thrust maps, echoes, and gamuts that give master compositions substance and gravitas. Knowing how master artists and illustrators compose their artwork unlocks your ability to give your artwork more meaning and energy. Enroll today and get a 7-day no-hassle money-back guarantee at core80.com.